And here it is again, the Modern Special. After playing the deck for about a year, what have we learned? The deck can still get amazingly fast, aggressive draws with the help of Simian's Spirit Guide and Goblin Guide, Eidolon of the Great Revel, and Dark Confidant, plus the super efficient Manland, Get to Encampment. It can also steal games away with Bloodchief Ascension, and also grind games out with its powerful removal spells, Path to Exile and Terminate, and then Isochron Scepter with Lightning Helix, Lightning Bolt, and Burst Lightning. So what is good against our deck? Well, for starters, Tarmogoyf is good, no surprise there. It's pretty much good against everything in the format. Sometimes Tarmogoyf is just going to come down and win the game. Can't feel too bad about that. That's how it works. That's why it's worth more than everything else in my deck combined. Secondly, Siege Rhino was printed in the last year. Comes into play with a 6-point life swing. Has a large 5 toughness. Also difficult for my little creatures to deal with. And also tramples right over them for a pretty quick lights out. Very fast combo decks are also a problem. Primeval Titan powered out on turn 2 by an Amulet of Vigor. Pretty hard to deal with, especially when they can Pact Negation when they're going to kill you. Oh well. Maybe surprising to you, but Monastery Swiftspear and everything else in the Boros aggro deck is a pretty difficult matchup for this deck, because it pretty much does whatever your deck does, but a lot faster and more streamlined. Particularly this card is difficult to deal with because the 2-butt makes the toughness difficult to block and also difficult to burn. You are likely going to have to 2-for-1 to get rid of this or die to it, which happens most of the time, unfortunately. So maybe we can make our deck better. Let's see what anything that has happened, blah 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 blah. So what has been printed in the last year that is relevant to this deck? Turns out Fate Reforged has been pretty good to this deck. We have Soul Flare, which gives you a 4/4 guy for possibly 2 mana, and he steals your abilities of the creatures at exile to cast them. So he can get haste, and there's a guy that flies in the sideboard, and lifelink, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. This guy can pretty much stand up to a early Tarmogoyf. It laughs at all your lightning bolts with its 4 toughness. It also costs 6 mana, so if you're not for the faint of heart, if you have a Dark Confidant in your deck, this deck is pretty greedy to begin with, so I think this is a good fit. And last but not least, Soulfire Grandmaster. Look at all this stuff. 1 white and 1 generic. You get a 2/2. It's pretty decent already. Has lifelink. Not terrible. Gives instants and sorceries I control lifelink. Well, that's fantastic. But wait, there's more? I can put them back in my hand after the spell resolves? Get out of town. I think we have a slam dunk winner. So we want to add 5 cards in. So what are we going to take out? I think we've discussed that Bloodchief Ascension. Pretty exciting when it works. Pretty terrible when it doesn't. So I think I'm looking at you. You have to go. So in with 2 Soul Flayers. In with 3 Soulfire Grandmasters. But wait, we've added 5 cards and took out 4. So now what? Well, Soulfire Grandmaster is pretty much sort of Isochron Scepter with legs, and Isochron Scepter being an artifact pretty much has a bullseye on it to get rid of it games 2 and 3, so I think we can spare one Isochron Scepter. And there you have the new and improved Modern Special. So here's the sideboard again. Is there anything we can do to make it better? I think so. So Blood Moon is a thing. It's pretty good against decks that want to cast a Siege Rhino. It's also good at stuffing all the non-basic lands and Amulet of Vigor. Can come out on turn 2 as well. It's also good against other cards in the format, such as whatever color Tron deck you run into, and also Scapeshift as well. So what will we take out? Well, as we said before, Geth's Verdict is mostly in there for Boggles and for Throne the Last Troll. And getting that double black mana that early in the game is kind of difficult. So with all that going together, I think that's pretty narrow to keep Geth's Verdict in there. It's going to get the Axe. Blind Obedience is a great card. It's won me many games. It provides extra reach, extra life gain. It turns your bad bolts into good bolts, your good bolts into amaze bolts. But at the end of the day, it is just sitting there doing nothing unless you have other cards to go with it. So I think that it'll probably get the Axe as well. So, out with these guys. Dun dun dun. And why not have another Aven Mind Sensor in there, because being able to stuff a tutor effect is always good, and also flying and flash is also super relevant with this deck as well. So I give you the new sideboard. 3 of Blood Moon, Aven Mind Sensor, Wear Tear, Rakdos Charm, and Volcanic Fallout. And that's the deck, the Modern Special.